Hello students, I am Rituja Patil, faculty from Keighley BCA College, Nippani. So in my previous video, I started with your next unit, that is second unit, and then we started discussing regarding some concepts of uh, regarding the design phases of the database that we are done with, and then we saw this sample database example with respect to the ER diagram. Okay, so here, and we also saw which are the entities, that is employee, department, project. They are the entity types. That is nothing but the relation, right? So if I consider this company database, we have identified there in a company there will be employees, and there will be the departments. There will be the employees and there will be the departments, and there will be the projects. So we all have gathered the data, and we thought that these three can be entities. So that's why in this CR diagram those three are treated as the entities, and the respective attributes, that is the respective characteristics of those entities also have discussed. So, and this is how the ER diagram looks like when we discuss regarding these different notations that will be used in the ER diagram. Okay, now let's see in depth regarding some of the concepts of this ER diagram, and with respect to the relational database management system. Okay, first thing that we are going to discuss here is regarding entity types, entity sets, and what are the attributes and the types of attributes and different types of keys. Okay, we know that ER model, that is the ER diagram. Just now we have seen that is the ER diagram. What it describes the different entities, right? They are nothing but the different tables and relationships among them. That is, employee works on a project, so that works on was a was a relationship, right? So that was also possible, that is also possible to represent using the ER diagram. And even we are able to represent the attribute. See, employee were having the SSNs, that is the social security number. So they were having the names. So names could be again divided into, say, first name, then middle initial, and the last name, like this. So even we are able to write such type of attributes. Even we are able to distinguish the key attributes in that, that is primary keys. Okay, and different types of keys are there, and the association among the entities. So basically ER diagram represents all of this, right? So now a little bit in depth, let's see what are all these things. Okay, the first thing what we have here is nothing but entity. Okay, so what are entity? Entity is nothing but it's a thing in real world. It's nothing but it's just a thing in real world, or we can say it is an object in the real world. Okay, it is just an object in the real world, uh, with an independent existence. With an what? With an independent existence. See, it can be anything. You can consider object as a chair. You can create a table for a chair also. Okay, so it depends on us. It depends on us. We can choose the entities, but make sure that we have to choose the appropriate entities with respect to the particular given world. Like how we had considered with respect to the company. In the company, what all things will come? What is the existence of a company? How we can say that it is a company, right? How we can say that it is a company? That is based upon the entities. Some of the entities, say employee we were having. If we are having the employees there, employees are nothing but they are the part of the company, and we can create an entity for it. That is, we can create a relation for it. Entity is nothing but for which we are going to create a relation. In the sense, what ultimately regarding that unit we will be creating a table. Regarding that we will be creating a table, means we are storing the data regarding that particular entity. Okay, so entity is a thing but a thing in a real world with an independent existence. See, it can be a physical object, or it can be simply an object, or which has a physical existence, or it may be a conceptual existence also, or it may be a conceptual existence also. Okay, So it's nothing but simply a thing with an independent existence. For example, you can take house, a person, an employee, a chair, okay, or say any company, a job, a course in the university. That is not a physical entity, but that's a concept, right? That's a concept existing, a course in the university. Such type of things are called as entities. Okay, so what are entities? Entity is nothing but it is a thing in a real world with an independent existence, and an entity, it can be it may be an object with a physical existence also, say a person, car, house, employee, anything, any physical in existence, or it may be an object with a conceptual existence. It can be a concept also, course, instance, company, job. So these are all the conceptual existence. So that is what we call it as a entity. Okay, and then we say attributes. What is mean by attributes? See, anything which describes that particular entity, that is called as an attribute. Means we can say a characteristics of an entity, okay, or a property of an entity which should describe that entity. It should describe that entity. Say, suppose if we take an employee, so how can you describe an employee? So there should be a something which there should be a some properties for employees, right? So what are those properties, what are, using which you can identify, you can recognize that this particular entity is nothing but an employee? See, first thing is employees will be having their IDs, or we can say SSN, social security numbers, and each and every employee will be having their names. They'll be having their names, and they'll be having the house address where in which they are staying, right? And employees will be having the age. They'll be having the age also, and there will be a phone number for them, home phone number, or we can say, or a mobile phone number, whatever it is, right? Even not only this much, even we can define some more attributes, say um, age or salary. So that is what we have to think, right? So based on which we can describe an entity, that is a property of an entity, or we can say characteristics of an entity, which describes completely, which describes that entity completely, is nothing but an attribute. That is nothing but an attribute. Now with respect to this company, you can take with respect to this company. Company has a name. Company will be having a name. So here we have taken Sumco Oil is a company. Okay, and companies will be having the headquarters, right? So another attribute which describes company is headquarters. So the headquarter of this Sumco Oil is in Houston. So that is what headquarter. And president, there will be a president for a company. So who is the president in this case? That is nothing but John Smith. John Smith is the president of that company. So like this, any any entity you take, so based on which we can describe that entity, based on which we can uh, describe, that is a properties using which we can describe that complete entity, or we can say characteristics using which we can describe that entity particularly, that is called as an attribute. That is called it an attribute. So let's go back to the company database and detail. Let's see which are all the different attributes which describe those particular entities. Okay, see, here we are having employee. So employees are recognized by their SSNs, their names, their date of birth, their address, their salary, and their gender, right? So these are all the different characteristics, or say properties, which will allow the person to recognize that he is an employee. Okay, similarly you take a department entity. So which are the different attributes associated with the a department, or the properties of a department? Nothing but departments will be having the numbers, each department will be given a different number, and departments will be associated with the names, and there will be location where that department is located, right? So the main thing is department name and department numbers. These are the attributes or the characteristics which describe that it is a department, that it is a department. Now coming for the project, if you consider this project is an conceptual existence, right? So how do we define, how do we identify that it's a project? See, projects will also be having the names, and projects will also be having the names, and the location also will be there for the projects, right? So project name and project number are the attributes. These are the given attributes. These are the attributes, or say properties, or say characteristics which describe that particular entity, that is project. Project is described by their numbers as well as their project names. Okay, so these are nothing but they are called as attribute. And how they are represented in a ER diagram? These attributes are represented in this oval shape. These attributes are represented what? The attributes are represented using the oval shape in the ER diagram. Okay, so here what all things we saw. What is an entity? Entity is nothing but it is a thing in the real world with an independent existence. Okay, and it can be a physical existence or it can be a conceptual existence. Physical in the sense, see, it can be a person, house, or employee, or a car, or any human being, or any animal. So it can be anything. That's a physical existence. Conceptual existence in the sense, like for example, a company is a concept, right? Or a job is not a physical entity. Any course you take, course is not a physical entity, but that is a concept, so we can create an entity for it. Okay, we can consider it as an entity. Now similarly, next we saw this attribute. What is meant by attribute? Is nothing but it is a particular property which describes that entity. Okay, or we can say a characteristics which describes that particular entity are called as an attribute. They are called as an attribute. Okay, okay. So next, moving for the types of attributes. So next we are having types of attributes. So basically attributes are categorized into three types. Attributes are categorized into three types. First one is simple versus composite attribute. Then second one is single valued versus multi-valued attributes. And then third one is stored versus derived attributes. Okay, so let's see one by one here. The first one is composite versus simple attribute or atomic attribute. Okay, now what is meant by composite attribute? See, uh, composite attributes can be divided into smaller subparts which represent more basic attributes with independent meanings. Like for example, just now we saw the employee table, right? So with respect to the company database, we saw there was an entity called employee, right? And in that employee entity, employees were having so many attributes. So among those attributes, if we consider an attribute, say, mm, there are so many attributes, right? Like say SSN, IDs, names and all. Now if you consider in address, so address we had taken as just one attribute, but in turn addresses can be again subdivided. They can be again divided into, address is an entity, it can be again divided into street address, right? And in which city, and what is the state that he is staying in, what is a zip code, or you can say a pin code of that city, right? So we can again divide that address attribute. See, address, if you consider as an attribute, that address is not a single value. If you can just write a name of the address, say Nipani, nobody will identify where, how your place, how your house will be identified exactly. We can't identify any person's house if we just know the name of the place, right? So address is not a simple attribute. Why? Because it is divided into smaller sub parts. So in a address we can have parts like street address, right? And in which city, and that city is present in which state. Even we can have for a country also, and what is a zip code for that, or say pin code for it, right? So now you can see, fine, this is again divided into subparts like street address, city, state, zip. Now again in turn the street address can also be divided again. Street address, it can also be divided in number, street number, and name of the street, and what exactly the name of the apartment where that employee lives in. If he is living in the apartment, exactly what is the number of the apartment that he is living in, right? So this is how, if we are able to divide one attribute into multiple types, into multiple sub parts, then such attributes are called as composite attributes, because they are composed of so many other sub attributes, so many other sub parts here. So that's why they are called as composite attributes. Why? Because they are composed of smaller subparts which represent more basic attributes with independent meaning. Each and every subpart has a meaning. You can see street address, it has a meaning. City, yes, it has a meaning. If we don't know the city, we can't identify. And state, yes, that also has an independent meaning. Two cities can be, two the same city name can be present in two different states also, right? It can be present in two different states or more than two different states. Okay, yes, we should know the zip code. If we know, that's why same state name can be there for two or more different states also. That is also possibility is there, right? So zip numbers are must and should, that is nothing but the code numbers, right? Now even street number is an independent existence, that also has a meaning. Street, if a street is bigger, if that is a bigger area, then how it can be identified? So we should know the number also. Street names are also must and should. And if he is living in an apartment, if that street is having multiple apartments, then how is it possible to identify? We should know the apartment numbers also, right? Okay, so this is a possibility. These are the different possibilities of the information that we can collect. If you want the exact information, all of this we need to collect. Okay, all these informations we need to collect, and we have to store it in our database. So this type of attribute is called as composite attribute. Composite attribute. Even we can take an example, another example, say name only. You can take the name as an example. This name can be divided into, say, first name and middle name and last name, right? So name of a person can be divided into first name, middle name and last name. See, my name, if I take first name is Rituja, middle name is A, last name is Patel. So Rituja A Patel, this is my complete name, because two or more employees can have the same name. If you want to know the exact name, complete name, full name of that person, then we can have a separate entries for first names, then middle names and for the last names. So here this name is nothing but, here this name is also a composite attribute. This name is also called as composite attribute. Why? This name is composed of some other attributes, that is first name, middle name as well as last name. Okay, subparts are here: first name, middle name and last name. These are the three subparts using which we can constitute an attribute, that is name. Okay, so therefore name is divided into smaller subparts, say first name, middle name and last name. So that's why here we can make this name also as a composite attribute. I hope this is clear now. Composite attributes are the attributes which can be further divided into smaller subparts, such type of attributes are called as composite attributes. Okay, such type of attributes are called as composite attributes. Now, what is meant by single attribute? What is meant by single attribute or simple attribute or atomic attributes? See, these are the attributes which are not divisible, They are called as single attributes, or we can say atomic attributes. They are called as single attributes, or we can say atomic attributes. Say for example, gender of an employee. So gender, it can be either male or female, right? So that's an atomic value. Again, that male and female, again we can't divide it into subparts. We can't divide them into a smaller subparts, right? So that's why that is called as a simple attribute. You can take another number also, say employee number. Employee number is also just a number, right? So we can't divide it into further subparts. So that's why that employee number is also a simple attribute. Okay, so what is basically a simple attribute, or we can say atomic attribute? These are nothing but the attributes which are not divisible into subparts, smaller subparts. Such type of attributes are called as here atomic attributes. Okay, so basically what all things I discussed in this video. See, here the next concept of ER diagram, that is entity types, entity sets, we have to discuss in further sessions regarding those things. So basically we know that ER model describes what are the entities, relationships and attributes present in that database, in that mini world, in that world. There we saw what is an entity. What is an entity? Entity is nothing but a thing in real world. That's one of the thing in a real world with an independent existence. So it can be a physical existence, or it may be a conceptual existence. Physical existence in the sense car, person, house, employee, any physical existence. It can be chair, table, pen, all those things are the physical existence. So those are nothing but they can also be an entity. Similarly, job, course, these are all the concepts, right? So these can also be considered as an entity. And then we have come across attribute. So what is an attribute? Attribute is nothing but a property or a characteristic which describes an entity. Okay, which describes an entity, that is nothing but the attribute. So here if I consider an employee name, employee address, okay, employee age, employee phone number, these are all the different attributes which describes that particular entity. Similarly, if you take here the company has a name, Sumco Oil, headquarters, and president. So these are the three different attributes, three different properties which describes that entity. Okay, so next we saw that is the types of attribute. Here one type of attribute we discussed here, that is simple versus composite. Composite attributes in the sense here or in this example we saw address, right? So address is an composite attribute. How can we say that address is a composite attribute? Why? Because address can also be again subdivided into street address. See, street address can be divided into street address, then city, then state, and then zip. Okay, and again see, and again the street address can be subdivided into street number, street name, and apartment number. So if any attribute can be divided into smaller subparts which represent more basic attributes with independent meaning, such type of attributes are called as composite attributes. Okay, now what is simple attribute? A simple or atomic attribute is an attribute which is not divisible, that is not possible, it is not possible to divide that attribute. Such type of attributes we call them as what? We call them as simple or atomic attributes. Now next type of attributes are single valued and multi-valued, and stored versus derived. So these attributes I will be discussing in my next videos. Okay.